everybody. How we doing this week? Welcome in, welcome in. I am coming to you live from my field station house in southern Arizona. I got here on Sunday, and I'm going to be here through August 1st. So, we're going to see how tonight goes. I don't know how reliable the internet's going to be, but we're going to try our best. I am, unfortunately, going to have to cancel chats for next week. I'm taking that other class, so I'll be teaching one for the first 10 days, and then the second 10, I'm taking a full class on identifying weevils. But that night, the schedule for the next chats, we have a field trip that we're going to have to leave after dinner, so unfortunately won't be able to make that one. And then the week after that is summer camp, so no bug hunt for 2 weeks. But we're coming back in August, just as buggy, just as strong. So, Wraithlord, thank you for the sub. Yeah, so this will be our last one for just 2 weeks, but then we'll come back ready as ever. But thanks y'all for understanding. Lots of people here tonight. Shrimp Baby, Silvera, Nikki, Birdologist, hello, Dans, all the Dans. I saw a bunch of Dans. Sam, London Burley Tortilla. Come back with so many bug questions. Yeah, that's great. Teach you all about weevils. Yes, that's the plan. So part of my new job that I started a couple weeks ago after I did the IRL bug hunt with Maya at Alveus, we get samples sent to us from like trucks and ships and stuff coming in that are importing goods. And if they find insects of any sort on them, they get sent to us to verify and see like what the identification is. This is really important because it helps us kind of monitor and keep track of pests coming in or even native species that are becoming more problematic and showing up on those sorts of places. And for the first 3 weeks that I've had this job, I would say that like 60% of the things that I've been sent so far have been weevils. And so this class is coming at a really, really good time for me personally because I don't know weevils that well. And if 60% of my stuff is going to be weevils, I'm really glad that I'm taking a 10-day long intensive class on them. Haunted Cottagecore, welcome in. Thank you. Glad you liked the podcast. Oh, Nicole's here too. Welcome. Afton, hello. Novice, can we talk about bombardier beetles? My new obsession. Yeah, absolutely. Bombardier beetles are one of my groups that I like a lot too. So, for those of you unfamiliar with my work, I work on ground beetles, the family Carabidae. And this question is about a particular subfamily of ground beetles that are called bombardier beetles. And they get that name because when they are threatened, they have a mix of two chemicals in their abdomen. And when they come together, they create basically an explosive defense. They mix these two chemicals together, and they will then create a very violent chemical reaction that actually comes out of the beetle's body at over 100 degrees Celsius, which is like over 200 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's actually coming out of the beetles boiling. And bombardier beetles are unique amongst the ground beetles in that they have one in females or two in males extra abdominal segments. So if you think about this defense and like why it works, if you are a frog or a bird and you're eating this little thing, you get a spray of boiling hot chemical in your mouth, basically, and nobody wants that. But in order to direct to wherever that threat is, because, you know, a bird might go for your middle leg or go for your head or whatever. So because they have this really incredible defense mechanism, they've also developed a really neat way of delivering it, in that they have these extra abdominal segments for extra flexibility. So they're able to take those last few segments and actually turn it around to the left or turn it over to the right and actually point that spray at whatever is attempting to eat them. Silvera. That's funny. And yeah, so the bombardier beetles have that. There are 52 species of bombardier beetles in the U.S., but many, many more worldwide. And there's actually another group of ground beetles that has kind of converged on the same defense mechanism, but a little bit different way of delivering it. So there are also these things called paucines, which are some of the coolest ground beetles. I think they're all pretty neat, but these ones are really interesting because they have oftentimes adapted to living in with ants, and because of that, their body changes to have these really big, kind of ridiculously shaped antennae and legs, and their body plans just get super, super modified. But in that group, they also have a kind of explosive chemical defense. Oh, hello, Stompy. Welcome to Bug Hunt. Haunted Cottagecore, Paussinae. And so paucines, they have the same exploding chemical defense. I don't know if it's the same chemical compound mixture. I think they're a little bit rarer, so I'm not sure if, in general, science knows what their chemical compounds are. But instead of having their extra abdominal segment, they have something that is called the flange of Coanda. And I have always thought that that sounds like some sort of mythical weapon that you could pick up in a dungeon in Skyrim. But what it is on the outside of the elytra, so the outside of the wing covers, they have a little groove that is directed forward. And the reason that structure is called the flange of Coanda is named after the physics principle that actually makes it work. So the Coanda effect is, let me see if I can get this right. I just had to write it in my book chapter. It is the propensity for liquids to follow a curved surface before returning to flowing in a straight line, or something like that. The easy way to think about the Coanda effect is if you take your kitchen sink and you turn it on. Hi, Mom. Welcome in. You didn't miss much. If you turn your sink on, and then you put a balloon or a ball or something else under there that's round, the water is going to hit the top going straight. It's going to curve around the ball, and then it's going to fall back off of the ball going straight. So liquids, when they encounter a curve, they go around the curve until they're able to flow straight down again. And so the reason why that flange is called that is because when they spray those liquid chemicals out, they are spraying them in a straight line. However, that straight line is intercepted by that little flange, which will redirect the liquid going forward. So the bombardier beetles were able to get around this with their extra abdominal segments, but the paw signs don't have that. They're oftentimes compacted and actually lose segments sometimes. And so they're able to spray it straight backwards, but then their flange catches that liquid and directs it forward towards whatever, predator is trying to eat them. I have no scientific backing for this. This is purely a personal anecdote. But the chemicals from paw signs come out way hotter than bombardier beetles do. Someone linked it, I think it was Sam, posted the link of the video or the clip from the live Maya stream, where we picked it up and you could see the little puff of smoke that comes out. And those aren't terrible. It comes out, it's warm, but it's not like especially painful for a human. The first time that I picked up a paw sign in southern Arizona, I was shocked. It felt like touching, you forget the stove is on and you accidentally touch the little burner. It was so hot, and I dropped the beetle, but then I immediately had to, get my act together so I could then grab the beetle again. So again, I don't know if there's any backing to that. Maybe it's just because the paw signs here are a little bit bigger than the bombardier beetles. And maybe that's why it felt different. But yeah, their chemical defenses are gnarly compared to the bombardier beetles. Again, at least in my personal experience. Beetle the beetle. Yeah, and I felt very connected to the forefathers of entomology in that moment. There is a very famous story about Charles Darwin collecting beetles, where he was able, he was doing something where he was picking up beetles, and he had beetles in both of his hands. And so Charles Darwin's logical thought was, well, I need to be able to hold more beetles. So he put one of the beetles in his mouth, which, I can't say it hasn't crossed my mind, but I think about this every single time, because he put a bombardier beetle in his mouth and very promptly spat it out, and I think eventually lost all 3 beetles. So that is not a strategy that I recommend. But in that moment of where I found a really cool beetle, I got sprayed and then dropped it and then had to try to refine my beetles. I was like, in this moment, me and Charles Darwin, we're the same. We're the same person. Tentrix, it's not really dangerous for the beetle itself. So in the body, the chemicals are stored separately. And they only become explosive when they are mixed together. And so it's like there's two separate chambers that come together with one nozzle out. And so only when they're combined does the chemical reaction happen to be able to actually spray that chemical defense. And there's a really cool flap that somebody that I'm friends with worked on and actually figured out that this was their mechanism. There's a flap that they will disperse a little tiny bit of the chemicals at one time. The flap will close and then they'll open it up again. So there's no chance for the chemical to react and then somehow get back up into the reservoir chambers and cause any damage. So it opens and shuts really quickly. And so when they actually shoot it out, to us, it seems like it's happening all at once. But it's actually a bunch of little tiny bursts of this chemical reaction happening. So it's actually not terrible, terribly dangerous to them. But it is something that they have to be wary of using. It's sort of like snake venom, where, you know, if they use it all up, they use up all their chemicals. It takes time to resynthesize those and like make them again. So they don't use it all the time. But when they do, it's usually incredibly effective. But then they kind of will have to go take a little bit of a break period, try and hunker down under a log or under a rock or something, and try not to get eaten again for the foreseeable future, so they're able to recharge a little bit. Oh, Egg looked this up. 20 shots, 20 rounds in the chamber. Super terrific. How well do bugs feel through their exoskeletons? Isn't it similar to a turtle shell? Can they get itchy? That's a good question. I don't know. They can feel through their exoskeleton, so let's start with that part of the question. Maybe while I think about your second ask there. They absolutely can feel through their exoskeleton, because that is like the only thing that they have. To most folks, you know, when you see a bug or you think about a bug, it's oftentimes very, very smooth. But if you look at them super high close and on like all the macro photos that like Cricket shares and stuff like that, you'll see that bugs are covered with tiny, tiny little hairs. And those hairs help them with touch. Because like a turtle exoskeleton, or like a turtle exoskeleton, like a turtle shell, the exoskeleton can feel things, but it's not super sensitive. But these little hairs are connected directly to like the nervous system, and they are able to sense and feel things a lot better. So they have these little hairs, which are projections, very, very thin projections of the exoskeleton that help them feel things. And that can be, actually touching food, or they have them over the back of their body in case they are a phagmotactic insect, which means that they like to have pressure on them. So think about things that like live under tree bark. They have like a sense of security where they know they can feel that there is something both on top and below them. And so those hairs help them kind of confirm that there is something on both sides of them. Antennae are also very, very hairy. When they have super long antennae, things like cockroaches, for instance, are able to sense and feel things with their exoskeletons and with their antennae. So they can feel. I don't know if they can get itchy. I have seen insects doing like cleaning behavior a lot. Flies do it, beetles do it, butterflies, moths, like all insects do have some sort of like cleaning ritual to be able to, get debris off their antennae, clean off their legs of excess dirt, whatever. But I don't know that I've ever seen one like scratch. So I'm going to say no on that one, but I can look. In my very scientific notes for the chat's recaps, we now have a bullet point that says itchy bugs. So I shall look through that after we're done lecturing tomorrow. Catching up. Is that how millipedes know how to roll up? Yeah, Nicole, millipedes are also hairy. They do also have like a lot of legs as well. Obviously, that's like a millipede thing. But legs are also very, very sensitive to touch. They can feel vibrations and things in the ground. And so when you're an insect, you've got 6, and that's like still pretty good. But when you're a millipede, you've got like 100 legs that are able to feel vibrations on the ground, which is why sometimes the millipedes and stuff will ball up and like roll into that little coil even before you touch them, and even before you're actually like that close to them, because they can feel you walking And they just know, like, oh, if I can feel something that big walking towards me, that is definitely that is definitely like a predator that's big enough to eat me. So I'm going to curl up preemptively. Guys, yes, thanks, Tortilla. Thanks for bailing me out. Jen, we're looking for poops. We're trying. We're trying. Vupa, do I play any bug-related video games? No, not really. Tortilla is lying. She said yes, but I don't truthfully. I don't game that much. I have been playing Pokemon since I was a kid, and Pokemon, like, a lot of the designs and like the idea behind Gotta Catch 'Em All was started by an entomologist. So the guy who actually developed Pokemon was a hobby entomologist in Japan, which is why a lot of the bug type Pokemon are like super accurate, even down to like behaviors. I have seen the things for like Grounded 2 and that Isopod game. But like a big hurdle for me at the moment is that I don't have a PC. I'm looking into getting one though. So I'm gonna say no on bug games for right now. But maybe in a few months, when I get settled and have my PC up and running, we might do some bug game streams. We'll see what happens. Nicole, are most insects sensitive to vibration? Yes, I would say that most of them are. Different extents, and they will also respond to like different types of vibrations. Like sound is technically a vibration, and part of the reason why flies are really good at escaping the the fly swatter coming down. It's because you like swinging your hand or the newspaper or whatever at it creates ripples in the air, just like sound traveling does, and that ripple hits the hair on the insect and gives them like a little bit of a jump start to be able to fly away before you actually hit them with whatever. So yeah, they are sensitive to vibrations. It's one of the major ways that they interact with their environment, but different ones interpret vibrations differently, and like the threshold for them, I think, is a little bit different. Logan, no, I've never played Bugaboo Pocket, unfortunately. Shrimp Baby, we'll see on that. The Void, the Pollinator Garden Void. Do you think a bug can recognize a human eye or a large animal eye as something spooky? I would say that most insects probably don't have enough resolution to be able to differentiate between an eye versus just kind of like something else being there. We've talked about insect vision a little bit before, but the way that movies portray it is very, very off. It's usually like a perfectly crisp photo of whatever they're looking at, but just repeated a bunch of times. And that's not how it works. Insect eyes are a lot like pixels in a photo or pixels in an image, where, yes, they have all of those little lenses on their eye, but that just helps them create a higher resolution photo of whatever they're looking at. So there are some beetles and other insect groups that tend to live in soil and leaf litter and things like that, where they don't really need to see very far, that will have like singular or maybe up to like 5 or 10 eye facets. And so imagine if you had to interpret your entire world with just 10 pixels. But then you move up to things like bees and flies, and like praying mantises are notorious for having really, really good vision. They have hundreds, if not thousands, of tiny little cells on their eyes to be able to kind of get that clarity. And so I don't think they would recognize an eye as particularly scary or something to be worried about, as much as they would just like see like, oh, there's something big coming towards me. But they do use animal eyes as a defense mechanism. There are a lot of caterpillars, or not really the caterpillars, but the moths, sometimes the caterpillars, but the moths will have eye spots on their hind wings. And that is their defense mechanism. You know, they're sitting on a tree, something flies up to them, they will flash their hind wings, and it will all of a sudden look like a bigger creature that might be able to eat the bird or whatever predator is coming for that prey item. There's also kind of a different mechanism working there. It's just called a startle response. So that's also the same reason. It's not always eye spots, but sometimes their hind wings are like, the moth might be drab brown, but then their hind wings are bright red. It's the same thing. They use that to just like flash the red, and that's usually enough to startle the bird or whatever predator it is, for that moth to be able to get away. But it's not just moths that do that. There are katydids and a bunch of other things as well that would have startle responses like that. There was a spider that beat Logan? I didn't even see it was so fast. Tortilla, yeah. So jumping spider vision is crazy. They have a totally different mechanism for vision than insects do. They have like a full-on lens, and they're able to like focus on distances. They can see color really, really well. When I was in undergrad, I worked in a jumping spider lab for about 2 years, and my job was basically just taking care of spiders. I had like 1,000 jumping spiders that I had to feed a little baby cricket to, like 2 or 3 times a week. But the reason I was doing that was to help with a PhD student's project where they were painting termites. And this sounds crazy because it is, but they were taking termites and painting them different colors to basically see if jumping spiders had an innate response to certain colors. Meaning that, like, we interpret reds and yellows and, like, red and black combinations, things like that, as, like, warning coloration. They were working on seeing if the jumping spiders had that same kind of thought process, right? So if they were taking termites that were painted blue, but not ones that were painted red. I say painted. I should say they were dyed with like natural colors and whatnot because we wanted to keep our spiders alive. But we were able to test their color vision and like figure out which colors they could see, which ones they had preferences for, and which ones they were actually able to avoid. Yeah, Tortilla, the polyphemus moth has eyes. That whole genus, Antheraea, all have eyes on their hind wings. Super Terrific, why is there such a big east-west divide in North America for bug species? Is that the case for other continents? It is purely based on our biogeography. So you have the US as like a rather large country compared to, you know, most of Europe and whatnot. And as you cross over the country, you have these different habitats, right? So the East Coast, you're on the coast, you start moving into hardwood forest, and then you have this transition, like around Kansas, where it starts going into what used to be like native prairie. Then, as you go further west in Kansas, you get into shortgrass prairie, and then you're in Colorado, and you start to hit mountain valleys. At the base of the Rockies, then you go up the Rockies, down the Rockies, up the Sierra Nevadas, down the Sierra Nevadas, and then you're back at the coast again. So there is this kind of progression of habitats on the continent of North America, like, in the U.S. specifically, that creates this divide where the eastern forest species can't really... there's a dispersal barrier for them to be able to get from one side of the country to the other. And that's like through the middle of the Great Plains where there's no trees. We also have like big differences in weather patterns. The Pacific Northwest gets a ton of rain every year, so it's wet and soggy all the time. While, the Atlantic Northeast is not quite so rainy, it's not so soggy, the soils don't hold water as much. And so, because the U.S. is so big and it covers all of these different ecoregions, we would call them, different species are able to be found in different spots. Now, there are absolutely many, many, many species that can be found all across the U.S. and even all across the world. But in the U.S. specifically, that central divide and like those habitat divisions are really important. That's something that I sort of worked on for my master's. In Kansas, in far eastern Kansas, you have like eastern deciduous forest, you've got trees. And then in the middle, you have the tall grass prairies, and then you start to get into central Kansas where you start getting more mixed and sand prairies. And then western Kansas is shortgrass. My master's research had 108 field sites all across Kansas, basically from one habitat gradient in the west all the way to the other in the east. And over the course of that transitional change from our eastern sites to our western sites, we had a 109 centimeter precipitation gradient, meaning that the east, the forest and the tallgrass prairie had 109 centimeters more of precipitation than our furthest west sites did. And so even in Kansas, which is like the central state of the or of the lower 48, lost my train of thought. Sorry, coming back. It's coming back to the station. Even in Kansas, which is like the geographic middle of the state or middle of the continent, you're able to see that transition. And I had completely different ground beetle communities in eastern Kansas than I did in western Kansas. And so that was just like a small scale, like a really cool thing we were able to see from my master's research. But if you blow that up to the entirety of the United States, like, and Canada, you see that pattern happen like a bunch of different times. And so it depends if it happens in the other parts of the world. A lot of the European countries, like I said, are quite a bit smaller, and they don't have quite the habitat diversity, or at least the transitions, as much as we do. But I know in like Southeast Asia, I was in Thailand last summer. Northern Thailand and southern Thailand are completely different. And so you get the same gradient effect going north to south a lot of the time that you do as going east to west. And so you can see those changes in organisms and like where things are distributed with latitude and longitude. And that's really cool. And the thing we are talking about right now is called biogeography. It's basically the science of figuring out how and why things are distributed where they are. there'll be beetle families that we only know of that are from New Zealand and Madagascar, and nowhere in between, and that is separated by very, very large portions of ocean. And so the idea there is that when Pangaea was connected and then broke up into Gondwana, those pieces were a lot closer together. They evolved at some point when they were together and then eventually were able to split apart. You have biogeographic occurrences where things will be distributed directly across the ocean from other things. So like on the west coast of one country to the east coast of another. And it's like, well, that doesn't make sense. Why does that happen? Well, one seed or plant or insect or whatever blew over from one coast to the other and was able to establish. And so there's lots of little things that you can look at with like evolutionary divergence times and molecular clocks and all that sort of stuff to figure out how and when these things separated from each other. And then looking at other things like plate tectonics and all this stuff, you can try to figure out like why that pattern is happening the way it is. All right, chat, who is this? Kevin, Joe, Wilford, Jerry, Walter. Yeah, not a yellow and black. Who had it? Sandra, Marcel, McClary the Fifth. Y'all have got great names for things, but no, this is this one. I think Ophelia had it, or at least Ophelia tried to have it. She said wolp, but she meant wolf, I'm assuming. Yeah, this one is a wolf spider. Wilfred the Wolfie. Yeah, so we are seeing straight down the eye sockets of this spider. And wolf spiders, if you've been to any chats before, we definitely talk about wolf spider vision quite a bit. They have really, really large eyes, and in order to help them see better at night, they have this structure called a tapetum lucidum, which is like a little special lens in the back of their eye that gives them that reflective glow. And not all spiders will have this. Wolf spiders are definitely one of the ones that will. I saw someone mention that you didn't know that they were that patterned. Wolf spiders are a very, very large family. In the US, I think we've got something like 250 species of wolf spider just in the US. And so they can look very, very different from one another. You have small ones that live on the coast that are maybe only like, I don't know, like a centimeter. But then you have Hogna and some of these larger genera that are like, I don't know, 2-inch leg span. So Bug Guide is saying 240 species and 21 genera in North America. So yeah, wolf spiders can look like a lot of different stuff. And that line straight down the back that we're seeing on the head right now, or on the back of the cephalothorax, that is called a cardiac mark. And that is a feature, a lot of wolf spiders will have that. So, as we've said before, and I say almost every time, insect identification is very, very tricky when you're not able to look at certain characters under a microscope. And so we're identifying this as best we can from the cameras. But it is kind of just a vibe thing. Has the vibes of the wolf spiders. Nicole, can they survive if they lose multiple legs? Yes, they can. Their healing is a little bit subpar. I was looking into this with recommendations like for staff if something were to happen to the tarantulas, but their clotting system in their body is not is not good. And so spiders sort of operate like hydraulics, where there's liquid that they're able to pump around and move their legs and things like that. And if they are to get ruptured, like if they were to fall or something were to crush them or break off a leg, they will oftentimes sort of just leak out, which is really terrible to say, but that sort of is what happens. And so as long as somehow they get the wound to close up, sometimes it happens naturally. If they're in the sun, it sort of clots up a little bit better. If they, get dirty, it'll help clog it up a little bit better. But yeah, they can survive without legs. As long as those legs heal over and they aren't losing too much hemolymph, they can definitely survive losing multiple legs. Are wolf spiders actually dangerous to humans? No, Aftonish, definitely not. People are often afraid of them because they are big, but there are no wolf spiders in the US, or as far as I know, anywhere, that are considered medically significant, which means that their venom has a compound that would warrant, a visit to a doctor. There are also no documented cases of allergies to spider venom, and so that's probably an understudied field. But in general, it's not going to have the same chance as being a problem as like a ant or bee sting, because their venom compositions are a lot different. So when spiders and ants and stuff sting you, there is something there that humans can be allergic to, but with spiders, if there is, we haven't found it yet. So if you were to get bitten by a spider, which is incredibly unlikely, unless you have seen the spider bite you, it's very, very difficult to diagnose. And even sometimes, medical doctors will diagnose something as a spider bite, but there's really no way to check for it. There's no test or anything. So unless you see the spider bite you, it's very unlikely to be a spider bite. But if you were to get bitten by a wolf spider, it would maybe be a little bit of swelling and a little bit painful, but there's no actual, there's no real danger to that. Thanks for the gift sub, Megasoy. Do bugs learn get more skilled over time? Is a young spider worse at hunting than a seasoned one? Yeah, probably. I would imagine there's part of that of like learning and knowing where to put up a web and like what to do with certain prey items. So it's just like, humans, you understand things a lot better as you develop. And for certain things, I bet there is a bit of a learning curve where they are worse at it as a youngster, because like if you're a visual predator, like wolf spiders, for instance, or, tiger beetles, to maybe shift off of the spider topic for the time being, they're very visual predators, and judging distance and timing and like the size of prey that you're actually able to take down is something that you have to figure out a little bit. So maybe you'll try and take down, you're a tiger beetle, you get on a grasshopper that's like way too big for you, a little bit better for next time. I don't know how many studies have been done on like that type of cognition with the insects or with spiders, but yes, I would imagine there is some sort of developmental learning curve where they get better as they get older. Can insects recognize faces like intelligent birds can? Yes, Nicole. We talked about this on the most recent, or not the most recent, but the episode that I did with Maya and Connor on World's Wildest. Certain insects definitely can. It's been proven that like bees and wasps can recognize faces, and I haven't really looked into this since then. But my hypothesis for that was because they live in such a social environment, they need to be able to recognize individuals better. So they have a higher like pattern recognition ability, which gives them then the ability to recognize people and faces as well. But your average bug, I don't think probably has the capacity to do that. If I were told I'd wake up as a bug tomorrow, what would you pick? You're hitting me with the hard questions now. I could probably think about that one for a very, very long time. Because there's pros and cons to being a lot of different bugs, right? Dragonflies would be cool, just because of how nimble and acrobatic and like their really good ability to fly would be. But then again, it could also be very cool to be an aquatic insect because holding your breath underwater has always been like one of the superpowers that I wish I had. Maybe I'll hit the best of both worlds and say something like a whirligig beetle. They're really neat. We just talked about those today. We covered those in the lectures for the class that I'm in right now. They can fly, they can swim, they get to hang out with their friends because they usually are associated and found in like these big congregations of multiple individuals. So like I think that would be pretty chill. We hang out like on stream banks and stuff like that in the water, and there aren't like that many direct predators of us, you know, maybe a fish occasionally. So yeah, I don't know. Without thinking too much about it, my new answer is the whirligig beetle. Because I can fly, I can swim, and I get to hang out with my friends. Jen, I did think about going that route with answering that question. The longest lived bugs are going to be like termite and ant queens. They can live upwards of like 10, 15, sometimes 20, 25 years. It really depends on the species. And yes, it would be cool to live that long of a lifespan. I wouldn't just want to like sit down and lay eggs. That's not my vibe. I'd rather be able to swim on the water with my friends. So, yeah, those are some of the longest lived bugs. Obviously, cicadas are up there as well. If you want like a long lived standard insect, meaning not like a special kind of like one time case in an ant colony sort of thing, but cicadas do live for the very traditional 17 years underground, and then they come out for a couple months, they scream, they mate, they die. That could be a pretty fun existence, but we'll stick with whirligig beetle for now. I think that's a fun option. Tortilla says ironclad beetle. Yeah, everybody, friend. Scream may die. Yep. Yeah, we'll stick with whirligig beetle. All right, we're wrapping up here. We've got about 10 minutes left, so any other pressing bug questions for this week? I'm also happy to talk more about the class if you guys have interest in like what we've been doing. Araxin, do I have a favorite species of ant? Yes. Yes, I do. It is Daceton amerigum. Daceton armigerum. It's a trapjaw ant that's from the from South American tropics, and it was like one of the first ants that I keyed out when I worked in an ant lab. It also has a really, really cool heart-shaped head. I saved Tortilla a little bit of a hunt on that one. I had the link, so Daceton is definitely my favorite ant. I've never seen it in the wild, which is very disappointing. Eventually, I'll get there. But those are really cool. Polyrhacus is cool. They're called fishhook ants sometimes. They've got these like really big spines on their backs, so those are cool. Ants are neat. Ants are neat in general. Cat streams. We talked about Stompy being a dinosaur. What species of bugs would you say are the dinosaurs? That's an easy question. Silverfish. They're not like the big powerful dinosaurs, but silverfish and fire brats. So things in the order Thysanura, or I guess Zygentoma now, and jumping bristles tails and the Microcoryphea. Those are the earliest evolving insects. They're the first ones to have 6 legs. Like those are the prototype insect that we still have around. If you want to go further back, the original like dinosaur insects that have gone extinct, you've got things like Meganura, which are the dragonflies that have that like 2 foot long wingspan. You've got ground beetle fossils all the way back to the Jurassic period. So yeah, the extant bugs that we still have, the living dinosaurs of the bug world, are going to be things like silverfish, which I know might not be like the most exciting bug dinosaur, but it is what we've got. Most armored bug, Nicole. Ironclad beetles. The Phleiodes diabolicus, that's the one we've talked about before. It's got these really special like struts and all kinds of pockets in its exoskeleton that push up against each other and are able to deal with a lot of force. And the amount of force that they can sustain before cracking is something like driving over them with a car. It's like an insane amount of pressure. And folks that work on ironclad beetles, I know the first time that I tried to pin one, I bent 3 pins before I got through. So I know folks who work on them like in the tropics will take a jeweler's or like a watchmaker's drill and literally drill through the exoskeleton to make the hole for the pin to go through. So most armored, that's not a question. It's definitely the ironclad beetles. Can a guy just have a chance to see a comically large odonate? Yeah, you probably could, Birdologist. There is a group. What are they called? So there are damselflies in the tropics that will pluck orb weaving spiders out of their webs. and they are quite large. They're called helicopter damselflies. Forest giant damselflies were previously recognized as their own family of pseudostigmatidae. That's what I was thinking of. But apparently these are just regular Synagrionans, which, okay, I learned something today. They're pretty big, and we do have some pretty big odonates still around. Not 2 foot big, but still pretty impressive. Sorry you could hear me typing. Super terrific. That's a good question. No, for the most part, no. So, the question was, sorry for those of you who are maybe just listening, do you have to drain bug juices when you want to pin them? It depends on the specimen. And something that I'm hoping to do, again, once in a couple months when I get my computer situation figured out, is some more, like, bug preparation streams. For beetles, you don't have to do that. Their exoskeletons are really, really hard, and the amount of goopy stuff on the inside is relatively small compared to the exoskeleton. So it's able to dry just fine inside of the exoskeleton and not be a problem. For some things, like really, really big grasshoppers, or if you're doing like tarantula taxidermy or anything like that, their abdomens are super goopy. They are full of fat and liquids and things like that that can go bad if they aren't, if they are just kind of left out to dry on their own. So there's a lot of different ways that people can deal with that. You can cut open the back of the abdomen and like squeeze it out. You can also then stuff it with cotton balls to kind of re-plump up, make it look lifelike, and then wait for it to dry. You can also squeeze it out, fill it with this like borax and talc powder to help it dry out. So it really depends on the specimen whether or not you need to do that. For most of my stuff, the answer is no, but in some cases, yes. I just don't collect big juicy grasshoppers and things like that I would potentially need to do that with. What's the bug that they thought was dead in a museum case for years and then it was actually alive? Jen? I don't know. I've never heard that. If you could find something about that and either whisper it to me on here, or if you're in the bug cord, you can send me a message on there, because I would be interested to look more into that. I've never heard of that story, but it's definitely possible. There's weird stuff that happens in the museums a lot. One of my favorite anecdotes, and this has really nothing to do with what you said, Jen, so sorry, we're tangenting a little bit. Goliath beetles. Those really big, really pretty black and white and like reddish brown scarabs that you get in Africa. There is a specimen of that genus that was collected in Africa that was collected with a shotgun. So they those beetles fly really, really high in the air, and before we had like really excellent technology to climb the trees and the really long like tropical nets, people would shoot the beetles down. And so they went back and they scanned, they like did a CT scan or an X-ray or something like that of the beetle at the London Museum, and you could still see the little tiny shotgun pellets in the body of the beetle. So I will leave it there for the evening. I think that's a fun anecdote to leave off on. And I will definitely, there's a good picture of that beetle, and like the Goliath beetle. Sorry, adding it to the notes. There's a really good picture of that scanned specimen, so I'll be able to put that in the chat's recap. Join the Discord, !bugcord, if you're not in there already. We hang out there during the week and answer your bug questions if you have them that are too pressing for Bug Hunt. There's lots of talented folks who can identify stuff that you found in there, or just want to post cool like bug t-shirt that you found in the wild this week. That is where we tend to hang out throughout the week between Bug Hunt Wednesdays. Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you as always to Logan for driving us around, getting the cams on all of our fantastic wild insects here at Alveus. Stick around for Ambassador Rounds. We check on all the animals before we go to bed, so that happens right after this. And just as a reminder, this is the last bug hunt until August. We are taking off next week, and then the week after that is Alveus Summer Camp. So get excited for that. I will miss you guys over the next 2 weeks, but come hang out in the Discord, and I will be able to pop in there a little bit throughout the next 2 weeks. But I will see you back here, same time, same place, the first week of August. Have a good night, y'all. Talk to you soon.